You have been waiting for the attack to look like the movies. The shaking room, the growling voice, the head that turns the wrong way, and that is exactly why you keep missing it. The real attack on your mind does not kick the door down, it knocks, quietly. In a voice that sounds almost exactly like your own, here is what I have learned after hundreds of hours sitting with both the brain science and some of the oldest Christian spiritual writing we have. They agree on something almost no one tells you. What a brain scanner now measures at the edge of your attention, a monk in the Egyptian desert mapped more than 1600 years ago and gave it a name. Modern psychology calls it an intrusive thought. The ancient church called it a tempting thought, and they had a battle plan for it long before we had the science. One honest thing before we go further. This is not medical advice, and I am not here to tell you that your anxiety, your depression, or your obsessive thoughts are a demon. Those are real, they have names, and they deserve real help from a doctor, a counselor, or a priest. What I am going to give you is a way to see what is happening at the gate of your mind so you stop fighting a wall you cannot even locate. Because that is the picture that holds all of this together. Think of your mind as a walled city, and at the front of that city there is a gate. Every thought that wants in has to approach that gate first. And standing there is meant to be a watchman. Most of us were never told the watchman existed. So the gate sits open, and we wonder why the city keeps getting taken. By the end of this, you will know the one shift the whole thing turns on, and it is not the one you would guess. But before any of that makes sense, I have to show you why the thing you have been trying has been quietly failing you. Here is the fix almost everyone reaches for: willpower. Push the thought out, try harder. Just stop thinking about it, and it fails every single time for a reason that has nothing to do with how strong you are. In 1987, in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, a researcher named Daniel Wegner ran a now famous experiment. He told people one thing: do not think about a white bear. That was it. And those people thought about the white bear more than the group who were free to think about it, and they kept rebounding to it afterward. The harder you shove the figure away from the gate, the harder it pushes back. That is not weakness. That is how the brain is wired. So if pushing harder makes it worse, the first thing you need is not more force. It is sight. You have to recognize what is actually standing at the gate. And it shows up in 5 ways. The first sign is the alien voice. It is a thought that does not sound like you, or worse, sounds exactly like you, but crueler than you would ever be to another living person. Here is the part that should set you free. In 2014, a study in the Journal of Obsessive Compulsive and Related Disorders surveyed people across 13 countries and 6 continents. Roughly 94 out of every 100 reported an unwanted, intrusive thought in just the previous 3 months. The lead researcher's conclusion was simple. It is not the thought that is the problem, it is what you make of it. The thought at the gate is normal. What you do next is everything. And the move here is the oldest one we have. Name it. That is a thought, not me. That is the accuser, not my father's voice. If this is already landing, do me one small favor and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. It genuinely helps this channel reach the next person fighting the same quiet war. The second sign is the rebound. Every time you try to crush the thought, it gets louder. You know why now. That is the white bear. And the ancient church knew the counter long before the lab did. A monk named John Cassian, writing in the early 5th century, taught his brothers that you do not defeat a thought by staring it down and wrestling it. You expel it by replacing it with a better one. You do not empty the gate. You put something true in front of it. The third sign is the loop. The same thought on repeat, replaying, rehearsing, refusing to be set down. And it feels productive, like you are finally processing it. You are not. Brain imaging links that kind of rumination to what scientists call the default mode network, which is just the brain's autopilot, the channel it runs when you drift. For some of us, that autopilot gets stuck playing the worst thought over and over. The counter is what the desert monks called watchfulness, a continuous standing of the mind at the entrance of the heart. You break the loop with an anchor, a short repeated prayer that pulls your attention back to the gate. The fourth sign is the fog of dread. Nothing specific is wrong, but everything feels like a threat. You are restless, and God feels far away for no reason you can name. Saint Ignatius of Loyola, writing in the 1500s, had a precise name for this. He called it desolation, a darkness of the soul, a pull toward low things, a sense of being cut off from your creator. And his rule was strict and brilliant. When you are in that fog, change nothing. Make no big decision in the dark. Hold the line until the light returns, because the fog lies about everything it shows you. That is not your faith failing, it is weather, and weather passes. The fifth sign is the pull to the dark. It is the quiet pressure towards secrecy and isolation, the voice that says, do not tell anyone. And this one is the most dangerous because shame is the soil the other four grow in. Scripture names your enemy as the accuser, the one whose whole strategy is to get you alone with the lie. The counter is the one thing the lie cannot survive, light. You say it out loud to one trusted person, a counselor, a confessor. The monks did this daily. They told their thoughts to an older brother every single day on purpose. If a single one of these signs is landing, subscribe so the next one finds you. Now watch how the old book and the brain scan describe the very same event. In his second letter to the Corinthians, Paul says to take every thought captive. In 2007, in the journal Psychological Science, researchers found that simply putting a feeling into words, just naming it, measurably turned down activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm center. Taking the thought captive and naming the intruder are two languages for one act. What the monks practiced, the scanner now measures. And here is the proof that the watchman can be trained. In 2004, in the Journal of Consulting and Clinical Psychology, researchers taught people with a history of repeated depression to watch their thoughts instead of obeying them. Relapse fell from 78% down to 36%. Learning to watch the thought instead of grabbing it nearly cut the fall in half. That is not the mind emptied. It is the mind taught to stand at its own gate. So here is the order, because the order is the whole thing. You name it first. If you skip naming and jump straight to fighting with willpower, you trigger the rebound and you lose. And because the loop and the fog both feed on secrecy, the light is not your last resort. It is what you pull early, the moment the shame is loudest. Let me make this something you can actually live this week. Each morning, take 60 seconds, name the first thoughts as they arrive, and set the watchman by speaking one line of scripture over the gate. Guard your inputs, especially at night, in the last hour before sleep, because the loop and the dread always rise when the city goes quiet. Keep a short prayer you can return to twice a day, and on demand, your anchor the moment a loop starts. When a thought hits, label it instead of fighting it. Once a week, bring the recurring one into the light with someone you trust. And protect your sleep, your food, your body. Because a tired brain sounds the alarm at everything. Here is the deeper thing, so slow down with me for a second. The thought that has been attacking you was never the real you. In John's Gospel, Jesus calls the enemy a murderer from the beginning and the father of lies. Neuroscience says the intrusion arrives before you ever consent to it. They are describing the same event from two directions. Two witnesses, the lab and the desert, pointing to the very same moment. You do not have to win an argument with the voice. You only have to recognize it and refuse to sign your name to it. The voice at the gate is not the verdict on who you are. So if even one of these five finally named something you have been fighting in the dark, type the word watchman in the comments so I know it reached you. Then send this to one person you know has been losing a quiet fight with their own mind. There is more like this waiting on the channel when you are ready. You were never the voice attacking you. You are the one who decides what comes through the gate. Guard the gate and the city is yours, because the mind that learns to watch is the mind that finally learns to rest.